See for yourself, see for yourself, see for yourself. This is the only podcast. Hold on, let's
This is the only podcast.
The only podcast that finds a way to escape a mad scientist's operating table laser death trap every time. I am your host, Crack the Case Ace, and I'm joined here today by...
Not gonna put on pants for this.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Aren't we all?
Aren't we all?
Honestly, I think it's becoming my catchphrase after you give your name.
I'm just hitting right on the nose there, what we're all thinking, and I just say it.
Yeah, I imagine that's what you do when you come up with these names. You're just like, what is the zeitgeist right now? What is everybody collectively going through? And how do I boil that down in just one quick name that I can use?
I'm caffeine free. Aren't we all?
There's a million examples of this. I feel like that's gonna be what goes down in history for this season, is that I just aren't we all for everything. So today's episode, we have a very film person's episode, or I guess an episode that a film person can get behind, I guess. I don't know. The name of the movie for today is Vertigo. Have you ever heard of Vertigo?
Oh god. Yes. I am aware of what Vertigo is, and I don't know why this sounds really familiar, because I know for a fact I haven't seen it.
So you say you're aware of what Vertigo is. Can you tell me what that means exactly?
It's not quite a fear of heights. It's like the fear of ascension to heights or something like that. It's the disorienting dizziness of heights. I think it is anyways.
I'm going to apologize really quick and just say I meant the 1958 film Vertigo.
Oh, not the word Vertigo?
Yeah, no, I meant the movie made in 1958, rated PG, created by Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, no, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so I've just given you quite a bit of information. It's a PG film. It is a thriller. It's described as a thriller. I'll go ahead and give you the blurb for it.
Your rendition of the verb?
Well, no, I just want to say that I also haven't seen this movie.
Oh, okay. A golden episode. Applause, everybody.
Yeah, everybody get excited. Golden episode. It is unfortunately fitting into the category of a movie I know so much about at this point that I might as well not watch it, but I have not seen it.
My understanding of it is, and by my understanding, I mean there was that episode of Epic Rap Battles of History that was all the directors, and I know that Vertigo was mentioned. So this is clearly a film of prominence, right?
There's a lot to be said about Vertigo, and I'll get into that later. But yes, it is kind of a big deal. I will say I don't know specific plot beats or character interactions or even character names or really what goes on in the film, but I am aware of its pedigree and aware of how important it is to film criticism and film history.
Okay.
But I'll just go ahead and get right into the blurb. The blurb reads as follows. An ex-police officer is hired to prevent an old friend's wife from committing suicide, but all is not as it seems. And that's it. What does that bring to mind immediately?
I don't know why I think the old friend's dead. See, in my head, he's an ex-cop, and I want to know who hired him. And the old friend, I assume, has died in a similar way as the wife is trying to kill herself. And since the name of the movie is Vertigo, I'm assuming it's just jumping off a very tall building.
That does make sense, If she's going to kill herself, jumping off of a high building would incorporate the title. I agree. The first thing that jumps out to me is, how does he become an ex-cop?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true.
Did he just retire, or was he fired for some reason? And we've had this in the podcast before, like in Itchy the Killer, the ex-cop in that one was fired because he lost his gun.
Right. I suppose it could be something unrelated to his friend or his friend's wife. But what if it was related? What if his old friend has died in a manner that is his causing? Or through his inaction, he's caused his friend. I don't know why I'm focused on the fact that his friend, because it didn't say dead friend, it's his old friend.
I would love to see it, and I know I'm going to say this word and it's going to get you excited. I'm hoping it's the police chief is the old friend.
Oh, God.
I know how much you love police chiefs. They're your favorite characters.
God, there's a way of thinking in food where everybody comes up with a new one every couple of years, where it's there was this one guy that was all food can be categorized into soup, salad, or sandwich. And I'm wondering if we're sort of creating our own thing here, where it's all movies are horror films or buddy cop films. It's only one or the other. You can boil everything down to it.
I'm horror films and you're buddy cop films. It's just
aren't we all?
it just boils down to our own specific preferences. You're like, boy, I love a story where there's like your boss is kind of being an asshole and he's yelling at you, but you're just doing your job and your best friend's there with you and he's defending you and you're like, okay, we'll be good. We won't be bad no more. And then you go out and you keep doing your job and you're working hard, but you don't want to piss off your boss anymore. And that just really speaks to me not wearing pants for this. And then I'm over here like, I just want to see scary shit. I don't care how it's presented to me. I don't give a fuck about all that. That's extra details. Scary shit.
That's it. So in this buddy cop movie,
I mean, do you think he'll have a sidekick? Like, will he have like a buddy?
I don't know if it's going to be presented as such. Like, I don't think it's going to be samurai buddy cop, but I think it's going to be like, I've got Alfred on the phone buddy cop.
Oh, like he's got a guy in the chair?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be pretty neat. This is in the 50s though, so I don't know if guy in the chair was like something you could do.
It is nice that the Spider-Man movies have given us that phrase to just use and everybody knows exactly what you mean by it now.
Right.
Like it existed before that. It had to have existed before that in order for them to be able to use it so casually and everybody understand. But it's nice that now it's like public knowledge. You can just throw that phrase out there and everybody gets it.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm concerned about with this blurb is like how much forethought is going into the fact that like we know the wife is going to kill herself. We know so far in advance that the wife is going to kill herself that we have time to hire a guy to go prevent it.
So it seems like it could just be very bare bones. He's hired by an annoyed, maybe she lives in an apartment complex and the guy who's like he's like the groundskeeper.
Oh, like the superintendent.
Yeah, so like the superintendent can hear her crying her fucking eyes out and he's so pissed off he can't get any sleep. So he calls up this dude and he's like, I know you're an old friend of her husband. Please come over here. I think she's going to kill herself. Just handle this, I'll pay you. And that could be it. Something as simple as that. Or it literally could just be the husband like, hey, I have to go overseas. Maybe he's like a international individual. Maybe he's a sailor or something. I don't know. I have to go overseas. I can't be there, but my wife is talking all this stuff. Can you just check in on her? And I'll pay you, check in on her once a week. I'll pay you every time you go by, water the plants while you're there, clean up the place a little. We'll claim you're there as a maid service, but you're really there to make sure she ain't killing herself. It could be something like that.
All right, so here's my big brain prediction. The ex-husband has hired the ex-cop to go save her from committing suicide. He's an ex-cop because he has failed at a similar job in the past. And the things are not what they seem, is that the ex-husband is actually going to kill his wife in a manner that looks like a suicide and will frame the incompetence of the ex-police officer yet again as the cause of her death, coming out scot-free. I feel like this has been done in some other movie that I'm just blanking on what it is, where it's like I don't know, it feels very Sherlock Holmesy, where it's you hire the investigator to solve the crime you're about to commit as proof that you couldn't have possibly committed it because you had to try to prevent it. You know what I mean?
Let me go ahead and tell you just how wrong you are, you stupid fucking idiot.
Listen, you're not gonna get me with this again, all right? It was a kidnapping the last time. This is gonna be exactly what I said this time.
No. And let me tell you why you're so fucking wrong. This is exactly what it is. I've figured it out. I have the answer.
Your big brain.
Here it is. So, ex-cop guy, he's just retired. That's it. That's all. He's really good.
Retired.
He's really good at what he does, and his old friend
for this shit.
His old friend knows that. He knows he's a really good, detective at this point. He's a star-spangled individual. He really knows what he's doing, okay? Great cop. Wonderful service that he had. There was a parade and everything, right?
Okay.
So he hires this guy thinking he's the best of the best. My wife is acting strange. She gets up at night and these weird hours, and she just makes all these weird noises in the other room. And when I ask her about it, she's got blood all over her. I think she's cutting herself. I think she's going to kill herself. He investigates. And it turns out the wife is actually a vampire. And then it's a vampire movie.
Yeah.
And the vertigo comes from when he finds out she's pissed off, so she grabs him and starts flying away with him. And he's like, I'm afraid of heights. Please don't take me up too high.
That's what it is. Bingo. Fucking bingo. Nailed it.
Nailing it.
We made a better movie. We made a better movie than Alfred Hitchcock.
And hey, I'm not trying to say that this lines up perfectly, but both vampire and vertigo start with the letter V. I'm just saying, mic drop.
Vertigo is just an anagram of vampire movie.
Yeah, if you just move the letters around, bam, vampire, spells vampire. And we don't have to do vampire. She could be a ghost. Maybe she was dead the whole time. Or she could be a werewolf and she's like eating things in the other room. That's where all the blood comes from. I don't know. All I know is that this is secretly not a buddy cop film, but in fact a horror film.
Can it be both? No, it can't be both, because you can't advocate for the buddy cop. I do the buddy cop, you do the horror. That's right.
Well, Dead Heat was both, actually. It was a horror film and a buddy cop film. Yeah. Well, I mean, the guy's a zombie. Like, how could it not be a horror film? That is horrific.
Well, I don't think being a zombie is horrific.
It is inherently horrific. How could it not be horrific?
Because they had a romance movie based off of zombies.
Okay, so it was a buddy cop film that was also a romance film that was also a horror film.
Yeah, all right, I'll give you that.
Nothing wrong with that. And it's only really a romance movie if we choose to read Bigelow and Richard as being madly in love. And I do choose to do that. They are madly in love. They love each other.
I mean, clearly, they went off into reincarnation together.
He said he looked great with lipstick on. What more do you need? Are there any big actors in this movie that you know of?
Not a clue.
This probably speaks to that phenomenon we talk about every now and again, where everybody has like a threshold, but I do not recognize any of these names. Kim Novak, James Stewart, Tom Helmore, Raymond Bailey, Ellen Corby.
Yeah, no, none of these are jumping out. So you mean to tell me the cop is not Vincent Price and it's in the 50s?
They had every chance, every opportunity.
Yeah. God, what a failure this movie was. That's why everybody remembers it, right? This was Alfred Hitchcock's biggest failure.
This is just them feeling bad that poor, sweet angel baby boy, Vincent Price, didn't get to play in the movie. Because he should have. He should have played every role. Every single one.
Wouldn't that be nice?
The best friend, the vampire wife, the ex-cop,
the buddy cop,
the not as it seems. Oh god, I wanted to say, on the note of like the significance of this film, and I know that nobody comes to this stupid fucking podcast to hear me blather on about why things are important or what they mean or anything like that, but just to cover some of the history of the film, Vertigo was at one point the greatest film of all time. There is a group of people who come together and they decide, they vote on, and they discuss once every, like, I think it's every 10 years, it might be every 5 years, some number of time goes by, and they decide what the greatest film of all time is.
Who gave them that authority?
Oh, I don't know if they do have any authority, but at this point it's something like it is noteworthy in film circles, so I guess they have some degree of authority. No clue.
Okay. What has surpassed Vertigo and when? It
used to be that Citizen Kane was considered the greatest film of all time. It kept that title for a very long time. It kept that position for a very long time. And then in a grand and wondrous upset, Vertigo overtook Citizen Kane, and a lot of people were genuinely upset about that.
Can we watch Citizen Kane for one of these podcasts, or is that just too known in film circles? Because I haven't seen it.
Vertigo is as known in film circles as Citizen Kane, maybe even more so, because Alfred Hitchcock is just that. He's the guy. Like, when you talk to people about what are films you need to watch, Alfred Hitchcock will definitely come up as a name.
Okay.
And it's considered one of his better movies, Vertigo is. There has been a movie to overtake it, and it's a 3.5 hour long movie. Thank God Vertigo is only 2 hours and 9 minutes long. I forget the name of the movie, but it's, you want me to try to read this name for you?
Yeah. Hit me.
Oh, God, hold on. Jean Dielman, 23, Quai de Commerce, 1080, Brussels. That's it, Brussels.
That sounds awfully French to be a good movie.
I don't know if it's French or not. It sounds hella French, but it's 3 hours and some change, and it was made in 1975.
And it's the greatest film of all time right now?
According to these people. It's interesting that they keep changing the greatest film of all time. It's almost like a commentary on how do we define greatness and like our ever evolving understanding of what is good, because none of these movies came out like since they started judging this. They're all from like the 50s or the 70s or some shit. They're not like someone just made this a week ago and holy shit, it's the best film ever. We have to change our answer for this. You know what I mean? So it's interesting that this is like a thing that's ongoing and that's ongoingly being discussed. If you just Google like what is the best film of all time, the answers that come up are like all over the fucking place. It's I don't know, very interesting. It is by the way, that film is, the language that it's in is French, so I'm going to go ahead and assume it is a French film. But yeah, a lot of the arguments for why Citizen Kane should retain its title as best film of all time are that every movie that they've picked since then have like incorporated things from Citizen Kane, things that Citizen Kane specifically invented in film history. So the argument is, without Citizen Kane, those other movies wouldn't have even been able to use those techniques that were invented for Citizen Kane. But hey, we are coming up on that time, and I'm not trying to belabor the point any of this movie's already, it's a little bit past, it's 40 minutes longer than we want it to be. Only 90-minute films deserve to be created. Is there anything else you would like to say before we jump ship into the film?
No. I think that wraps it up.
Do you have any experience with Hitchcock films other than Vertigo?
If I do, I don't remember them. Like, I'm sure at some point you could be like, oh, you saw this movie though, right? So like, oh, well, I suppose I did. But I'm not very good at like tying a director to a movie. I don't even tie actors to movies very well.
So I've seen a couple of Hitchcock films, and I'll just name the ones that I've seen. And if you're like, oh yeah, I have seen that one, then you can just Psycho, The Birds, and North by Northwest are the 3 that I've seen.
I think I've seen The Birds.
The Birds is a really cool film, and it is in that horror camp. You know, we do love a good horror film.
Right.
And Psycho is also a pretty big horror film.
I know that's the popular one. Like, I know of it. I don't think I watched it.
It's not as outlandish as The Birds is. It has a much more low-to-the-ground kind of story to tell and a horror to explore. But Hitchcock's not above doing horror. This literally could be a vampire movie for all we know.
It's both, right? It's a vampire buddy. It's a buddy vampire movie.
My friend Dracula. Oh, Nosferatu, you dog! Don't you go grabbing skirts while we're hanging out in town together. I don't want to get in no trouble with the ladies.
It's Vertigo, also subtitled Dracula and the Wolfman versus Santo.
Santo's the villain in this one, and Dracula and the Wolfman are the good guys.
Yep, that's their old friend Santo.
If only we could all be so lucky. Really, we are all that lucky. We always have Santo, and we will always have Santo. Thank you, Santo. All right, well, we'll call it a day here and go right into the movie.
Ship it off. Let's go.
We'll be back in 10 seconds. Everybody, pause the podcast, go watch the movie, come on back, and you'll hear us squawking about it. Not unlike birds ourselves.
Vertigo themed outro music, and go. And they.
We're back from watching the movie. There are some really strong characters in this movie, and I just want to ask right out the gate, were there any characters that stood out to you that you were like, whoa?
I feel like whenever we dip into the past, and I guess I'm speaking specifically about Samurai Cop, there's always some poor woman getting shafted like fuck. Like, what's her face with the bob and the glasses? Poor her, in every sense of the word, right?
You have accidentally stumbled upon my trap card, good sir. Midge is my favorite character in this movie. I love Midge. I love her performance. It's so soft and subtle and caring, and yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. She got completely shafted on this deal, and I want justice for Midge.
I want to say before we get any further, when we did the what was it, sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and you were like, and you bamboozled me, well, I won't be bamboozled again, sir, because I nailed it.
On that note, and I think you're right, I think you did, I'm gonna give credit where credit was due. More even than my prediction. You were pretty spot on. But I will say this, was there not a period of time where you thought, oh fuck, he was right, it was ghosts the whole time?
Yeah, for up until he found the chick in the green dress, I was like, it's vampires. Like, goddamn, I didn't think they were interested in vampires at that point. And then as soon as it's like, my beloved, what's your face? And I'm like, you son of a bitch, you tried to get me. And then I will say, those 2 renditions of the movie didn't prepare me for the actual horror show that came immediately after that, because that's when I actually started to feel dread. It was in all the moments after that fucking reveal.
What do you mean? Be more specific. When you say after that reveal, what reveal specifically? Because the movie kind of has reveal after reveal after reveal after a very specific point.
So after the reveal where she's writing her, I actually loved you, but I don't have the courage to sit here and say that to your face, blah blah, and then she tears it up.
Yeah.
So after that, I was like, all right, now it's gonna be like a romance, right? And then it's just there was a part where I could feel myself just fucking sinking into despair as he's like, no, just put on the suit. You can't care that much. Now dye your hair.
I told them to do your hair a certain way. Why didn't they do it that way? Well, I just didn't really like it. Well, can you do it now? Goddamn. Yeah, he gets really frantic about it, and it starts becoming I was really hoping he would kill her. Grieving process.
In his manic state, instead of the yet another plot twist reveal at the end there.
It frustrates me because it's like, it's the difference between one decision. They could have done everything exactly the same all the way up till he gets to the top of the bell tower. She's like explaining everything to him, telling him how much she loves him, and then the nun shows up. She screams, and instead of having her just run off of the balcony, he pushes her.
I would have appreciated a version, and I mean, God, prepare the inboxes for all the people that are going to think that I know better than what's-his-face, John Hancock. But there's a rendition of this movie that's really interesting where he basically never finds out that, like, he was duped. Or, like, maybe after he has frantically killed her in his manic state of trying to find this woman, this imaginary woman he loved, maybe he finds the note that she tore up. But, like, there's an interesting story here about how she broke this man. That's kind of what I wanted, as opposed to, like, and then he finds out. He confronts her in the bell tower, and I don't think he wanted to kill her, and then the spooky nun comes out. Oopsie poopsie, she died.
I took the nun showing up and her jumping out of the bell tower as she didn't want people to figure out that she was Madeline the whole time and had basically committed fraud, and that she's not really Judy, but instead Madeline. And at that point, if the nun saw her, the nun who was like at the trial and everything, sees her and is like, hey, aren't you dead? Because she looks just like Madeline at this point. And she's at the same place with the same guy, and they're talking about how much they love each other. Like, even if she was like, no, I'm Judy, I just dress up like this because he tells me to, and I look exactly like her, and I'm in the same place with the same guy, there's no way she's getting away with it. So maybe, and that's how I read it. I read it as she thought she was caught, so she jumped.
No,
but it could have been.
I saw the, like, spooky silhouette, like, rising up from the floor, and I thought that was, like, her in her terror. Like, I think it's the same idea that, like, she was, like, terrified of comeuppance, but I think it was more like a spiritual comeuppance. Like, that was the devil come to take her or some shit like that. You know what I mean? That's how I saw it. Like, she was terrified. She was already terrified by him, and then this fucking spoopy nun lady fucking rises up out of the ground, and she freaks the fuck out.
The reason I took it to the place of, like, she thought she was caught, like, she realized that the nun would figure it out, is just that she'd been kissing on John and saying how much she loved him, and then the nun comes up. If it was still her, like, cowering in the corner and him yelling at her, and then the nun comes up and then she jumps out, I would say, yeah, she was scared of John, she thought he might do something drastic, and then anything else came up and she just reacted very poorly.
Oh, okay.
But because it had that moment of her, like, holding him and kissing him and saying how much she actually loves him and everything's going to be okay, I would think that she'd be calmed down enough and comfortable enough, because he's holding her, you know, and he's not, like, keeping her on guard. So that's how I took it, but I think it can be read either way, and certainly that silhouette is very scary.
That's the part that leads me to believe it, because it's like they could have just had a nun coming up. That was like a scary ghost moment, you know?
I agree.
But anyways,
I agree.
Is that a practical effect that they did with the fucking stereoscopic fisheye bullshit that they did every time he was living through Vertigo?
Like whenever he was going up the stairs and he would look down and see, like, whoa, that.
Yeah, and it would like stretch. Is that something that they like? How did they do that? I imagine you know.
Oh, I actually do not know the answer to this, but I do know that that effect specifically was invented for this movie, as far as I understand it. It might be building on a previous effect that already existed, and they just sort of like changed it a little to make it specific to this film. I'm not sure, but that is the thing that Vertigo is like known for, is that effect. That effect was revolutionary and really cool and interesting and well implemented.
Another visual thing I wanted to bring up is that I thought, first off, rolling into the movie where they had the eye thing. So I saw that, thought it was dope, and for some reason it led me to believe that this was going to be like a black and white movie.
For me, the eye thing, because I knew this wasn't a black and white movie, but the eye thing for me meant that this was going to have a lot more like trippy sci-fi kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And it honestly, the biggest disappointment for this movie for me is how little Vertigo even came up as a thing.
I thought they were going to drop it entirely. I think it's really cool how they tricked me into thinking they were going to drop it entirely, because we spent like a long time where it didn't matter. Like where we were dealing with this weird vampire historical, like I think I was actually born in the 1800s. All this weird shit is going on. And then finally at the culmination of that, he gets like his second bout of vertigo.
I did like the opening for the movie, not only in the visuals with the eye and everything, even though it ended up being a cool visual to like have the opening credits run through, but then the actual first scene of the film is really cool. The big chase scene on top of the buildings and like jumping over the gaps between the buildings and everything. That was really cool and actiony and interesting.
I did like that, yeah.
And then it leads into like a big exposition scene with Midge, and you're kind of thinking, all right, Midge is his love interest character. They already talked about how they were engaged at one point, and then they talk about how John is still single and he's still interested in, Midge that way, and he's available and all this stuff. So it's like, okay, so are Midge and him
not going to work out because Midge isn't interested, but John is?
Because that's how it's established only early on, and then later they sort of flip it where now John isn't interested, but Midge is. So I don't know. I got really invested in Midge.
They had that line earlier where it's like, oh, I'm just waiting for the perfect guy, and he's like, oh, but of course you mean me, and it's like they could have fucked right there, and they didn't. And then over time, it's just like, and then that scene with the painting where he's just like, guess I don't want that drink anymore. It's
that scene with the painting.
So bad for Midge the whole time.
Yeah, that scene with the painting crippled me. It's so perfect. The painting she made is a remarkably well-made painting, and she's sitting there in the exact same pose. It's just so perfect. I don't know. She offers to go and see a movie with him. This scene was made for me. I'm like, Midge, you're making all the right moves. I don't know how he could ever say no to you. And then he does, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. She said movie. She said dinner. She made a painting for you. What more can anyone do? Oh man, this is literally, if anybody out there is wondering how to flirt with me directly, this is it. Just do this.
I made you a scotch and soda. I cooked you a fucking steak and potato dinner, and we can go watch the new what's the name? The name of the movie? The dude who made
You can name any director you want right now.
No, I was thinking Cronenberg, but yes. I mean, really anything is like.
You could just literally.
Would you like to go out to the movies and see? Yes, anything, please.
Stop right there. I'll get my coat. Oh god. Yeah, man. I felt so bad for Midge. Admittedly, the character of Madeline is a beautiful woman, and she's kind of exactly what was popular at the time, all sort of wrapped up into one character. But I just don't see ever passing up on Midge, man. Midge is the GOAT. Another big disappointment for me in the movie is just how many scenes we had to sit through where he's just following Madeline in the car.
Right.
Why? I get it, Alfred Hitchcock. You kind of want us to sit and stew in it, and obviously the soundtrack, that's another thing we should probably talk about. The soundtrack for this movie is amazing.
I was willing to give, it was like the first and the second car chase scene, basically, where I was like, okay, he's doing detective work, and now he's followed her to here, and now he's followed her to there. But it's like, it's the third one where she makes like 4 left turns and then 3 right turns, and even he's getting irritated with the amount of car chasing he's doing. He's throwing his hands up and being like, what the fuck, lady? Make up your goddamn mind. And then she ends up at his house. That last one, I didn't like.
Yeah, honestly, it's all of them for me. I don't think we need them at all. They don't do anything for us other than showing us that John is like thinking, I guess, while he's following this lady. I do not know. I didn't love that, and I didn't love just how it felt kind of impossible that Madeline wouldn't have like seen him over her shoulder. And I guess if you think of the plot of the film, she's kind of purposefully trying not to let him know that she knows he's following her.
Right, but he's supposed to be some like hotshot detective, and for him to not take any precautions, there's a certain amount of suspension of disbelief that I am willing to give a movie. But he pulled down a fucking back alley where it was just the two of them, and she like looked over and was like, I'm blocking the car behind me. Well, fuck him. And then she goes into the store and then comes back out, and he starts up his car again, and it's like, oh, thank God she didn't see me. No, she saw you. Everybody saw you.
Yeah. And it makes me think about that the guy Evans or whatever his name was that like hired him, and he pushed so hard to get him hired that like a real detective would have been like, honestly, man, you want this a little bit too bad. I don't think this is safe for me to be doing, mixing business with pleasure. We're friends. I don't want to, you're gonna shoot the messenger as soon as I tell you that your wife is like faking it all so she can cheat on you or some shit, whatever I find out, because a real detective would know. In all likelihood, she's probably just cheating on you, dude, and you shouldn't hear that from a friend. You should hear that from an unbiased third party.
And all things considered, I don't know why, like, I feel like I might have blinked and missed something where it was like, yeah, I'm, a good old friend, and I'm tracking down his wife to figure out what it is that she's doing, and then I'm gonna kiss her. And it's like, what? Why?
Yeah, that was the strangest part for me. Say what you will about Midge and Madeline and the virtues of either one of the characters as a romantic option, but like, there were active reasons he should not be engaging with Madeline romantically, and no active reasons why he should, other than, I decided I would do that now.
Yeah!
I genuinely genuinely want to sit down with Alfred Hitchcock and just be like, hey man, why is your detective making out with his mark? Did he do that a lot in his like years as a detective on the force, or is this just like, well, I'm a civilian now, so I can make out with the perps. I don't need to
care about integrity.
Yeah, it's like they wrote that in, and it's like, yeah, but why? He's like, what do you mean why? Because she's a dame, that's why. All right, you just go doing that shit?
To be honest, man, I bet you're a detective in the 50s. I bet you every single woman that you apprehend, you probably make out with her before you get to the police station.
Yeah, no, I guess that's pretty true.
I mean, it happens today, so...
I mean, I guess this is like a different era, right? Where it's like, I know by this time we're like, or at least in the immediately following exposition, but when he like tracks her down to her apartment, when she, after the charade is done, and he finds her in the green dress and tracks her up to her apartment, and he's like, let me in, and she's like, no, and he's like, yes, and she says no, and he goes, well, all right, I guess I'll let you in, but just so you know, I can scream. And it's like, holy shit, is this just how people were back then, or is this Hollywood magic?
Yeah, I'm a really loud screamer. Oh, you won't have to. The fact that you said you're a really loud screamer, like you let me know that you're good at screaming, probably means you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, if this was at all in your mind, especially when the guy that, well, up until this point, that you haven't met, has now tracked you down to your apartment, is not letting you shut the door, and says, well, don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. That's what people who are going to hurt you say.
Absolutely. And then when he goes to her little like Carlotta Valdez single room place, and he like shows the front teller his police ID, I assume. Like he's like, here's my badge, and she's like, right. Oh, okay, I'll let you go and see your room if you're a police officer. Sorry, which is illegal at this point because he's not a cop anymore, and she's not in the room apparently. Why didn't that like set off alarms in his head? No, I watched her come in here. It kind of feels like there were parts of this that were originally supposed to be a ghost story, and then halfway through they were like, no, detective stuff is really popular right now. Just turn it into a straight detective narrative where somebody frames somebody else for murder or something. I don't know. And he's like, well, no, it's supposed to be a ghost story. That's why when he got her he like cornered her at her second home that she lives by herself without her husband. That's why she disappears, because she's a ghost.
Right.
And they're like, no, just leave it in. Who cares? Whatever. And he's like, okay, because if I was going to do a detective story, I wouldn't have had all this weird ghosty stuff where she thinks she's a different person because she actually has been dead for 100 years or something.
Yeah, but it's parts like that I didn't get, because it's like almost like he's starting to believe that she's actually this fucking Carlotta lady. Why are we leaning so hard on this narrative? Like, it's almost as if they have no respect for him as a detective at all. They're like, no. On top of framing him for the murder, we're gonna fucking gaslight the shit out of him.
So that brings up a very good question. They say that the only reason at the end, the final scene of the movie, he asks, why did y'all frame me for this? And she says, because of your incident. You have vertigo. Like, that's why. It almost seems like maybe in the 1950s, they thought anybody who like has a traumatic incident like that, they probably wouldn't even call it a traumatic incident. Anybody who's a big enough fuck up like that somebody fell and died and then they had to go and get hospitalized for some amount of time. He's probably just a big, dumb, stupid idiot because he saw someone die and then he had to go to the hospital for that.
He's weak-willed enough to have PTSD before they had a name for it.
Yeah. Or even maybe they did have a name for it and they were just like, yeah, that means you're an idiot. That's all that means.
Only pussies get that.
PTSD is just a long fucking string of letters for you watched someone die and it made you dumb. I would not be surprised to find out that that's genuinely the viewpoint on this. So they were like, oh, he's an idiot and he thinks of himself as a detective and the community thinks of him as a detective? Let's just play that up because obviously we can take advantage of that because he's dumb.
Yeah, it blows my mind because like that makes it explains away a lot of the stupid shit that went on, because I understand like why they're like, oh, Andy's got vertigo. It's like, I don't, but yeah, all that other shit is just like, and if he's stupid enough to be scared of heights, I mean, surely he's stupid enough to believe in ghosts.
The reason I gave a pass to a lot of the, like, Carlotta Valdez and John romance stuff was because I really thought they were going to reveal that Madeline doesn't exist, and it's all Carlotta Valdez, and John, it turns out, is also this ancient ghost man, and that's why they're
falling in love so rapidly, because they were always meant to be together.
Ta-da!
Yeah,
ghosts.
That's pretty good.
They're 100-year-old ghosts, and they're just wandering the earth until they come together, and that's what I thought the story was going to be. I was like, damn, I really called this one. What a genius I am. And then it was like, actually, the other guy called it. I was convinced, man.
Yeah, I thought the Carlotta shit was like spot on. Like that shit worked too well. And then they were like, it's like somebody in production like fucking quit. They're like, this is the stupidest shit ever, and I'm not gonna be a part of it. They're like, wait, no, we can't do it. All right, well, with what we have, what other movie can we make?
Yeah, he was the head supervisor of ghosts, and they were
Yeah.
like, he was like, I quit, I can't do this shit anymore, and they were like, damn, well, no one else can do anything with ghosts, so I guess we're just gonna do detective stuff now because everyone knows how to write that in 1950.
Fuck me.
I liked, in terms of set design, Ernie's is the top of the mountain, dude.
Oh god, it was great. I thought it was so cool, and like I think they went in the first time and they just like went in. I thought the inside was so cool, but the fact that it had the fucking I don't know what you call that kind of door where you can like the saloon style door where you push it through and it'll just swing there, and then you can look in and see like through the stained glass and how it's like dark red across the back of the wall. If Ernie's is still around, I'd eat there. That looks like a bitch in place.
That deep red and like the filigree pattern on the wallpaper or whatever, beautiful. I would love to be in there. I'd love to just be seen walking around in there. It would make me so happy. That's where I would take all the photos of myself. If someone's like, oh, send me a selfie of you, I'd be like, I gotta swing by Ernie's really fast, but I'll get it to you by the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I really liked the scene where it's like late at night and they're at her hotel room, but it's the green neon like shining through the window, and like it was shown on her face, and I thought that was a neat shot. But then she like turns and it's just her silhouette, and that's all John can see, and I thought that was really cool.
Kind of at the end of the movie when it's Judy instead of Madeline.
Yeah, when it's Judy, and it's like they're fighting over like how far she's willing to change herself for him.
Did you think that was like a shout out to earlier in the film when they're at Ernie's and he can see Madeline's silhouette, or not silhouette, but her like profile, like her side profile, and that's the whole shot?
I think that's a nice callback. That whole scene probably ties together really well for both of them, because it's like her being jealous of the fake character that like she had to play. It's like, oh, he just loves the character and not me, and that's why it was like green straight on her face, because that's how she was feeling, all envious and shit. And then the profile's a callback to the fact that like it's the thing that like reinvigorates it for him. Maybe he's like catching on that he's distressing her, and then he sees the profile and he's like, no, you need to do this for me.
Yeah, you have to become Madeline, because you being like this blackened shadow, this silhouette, isn't gonna do it for me. You have to become the whole thing. I will say this movie has all the hallmarks of a Hitchcock movie, where it's sort of like slow and deliberate and has a lot of scenes that are kind of just like, look how beautiful this shot is, or whatever, where nothing's going on, but it is a beautiful shot, so you kind of let it, you're like, yeah, okay, I do like it. Doesn't do great for multiple viewings is the problem. There's like a good 10 or 15 minutes of this movie. It's just wasted time on nice visuals that don't
fucking overlooks of fucking San Francisco, or like maybe that's part of the driving around. They're like, hey, I swear to God, one of the streets they drove down was the fucking Full House street.
Yeah, probably. It's good filmmaking. It looks good, and it feels really nice on your first or second viewing. But if this is the kind of movie where you're like, I love Vertigo, it's my favorite movie ever, I promise you after your third or fourth viewing, you're going to be like, all right, could we cut the parts where you're just driving around, or cut the parts where you're just doing an establishing shot that lasts a few seconds too many?
Yeah, it's really like they wanted to showcase a whole bunch of weird shit, like the fucking the San Francisco shipbuilding marina or whatever. It's like, I feel like they really fucking tried to shoehorn that shit in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he could have been generic businessman who inherited the family business where they do business, and it's like, that's it. That's all you fucking needed was the fucking swag desk. But we really had to see the marina.
How long do you think that this movie takes place over? Like, how many days is the course of time that goes by?
I want to say it's like a couple weeks, like, but I'm saying that because that's like the amount of time that makes sense for him to like develop this emotional connection to me. But if we really just write that off as like, nah, I'm gonna save you from jumping out in the river, and then I'm gonna smooch you, she, like, you can do that in 2 days.
Sure. There is the part where he's like catatonic after having that nightmare.
That's right. Oh, that's right. That's confusing.
The doctor says it would take 6 months to a year for him to get out of there.
It's enough time for him to not only have cured himself, but I don't think we see Midge again for the rest of the movie. So it's like, it's enough time for also Midge to have given up on this fucker.
Well, her last line is, well, doctor, you should know that the girl that he saw die, he was in love with her, and he still is. And that's like her last big line in the movie. I think it's heavily implied that, like,
She doesn't give up because it's taking a long time. She gives up
because she's come to terms with the fact that he still loves that woman. But it just doesn't seem like Midge's character to do that. It seems like she'd probably still keep coming around and trying to help him and everything. And maybe we just don't see her in the rest of the movie because, the movie was already getting kind of long. So
I guess so. Like, it definitely doesn't fit her character because, like, even after, like, having one or two confirmations that he's now fucking schmoozing with his mark there, she knows enough about it to know about this Carlotta shit and then, like, study the painting and make her rendition of the Carlotta painting. So it's like, she's as much a fanatic about him as he is for Madeline.
Yeah, which kind of makes it tragic and sort of poetic in a way. I will say, on the note of the movie getting a little long, I genuinely thought it was going to end after the nightmare sequence and once he wakes up in the, like, medical facility, and probably right around the part where Midge explains to the doctor that he still loves Madeline, and that's it. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah, it could have ended there.
And I also kind of was interested in the idea, because the movie kept going, I was like, well, maybe what they're going to reveal is that Midge is his psychiatrist who has to report to, like, a head doctor and everything, and that's why she explains all that stuff to him. But the rest of the events in the movie were completely fabricated inside of John, and he's just sort of saying these things to his doctor, or his psychiatrist, Midge, and Midge is in his, like, fantasies because he recognizes her from real life and is retelling her these things, and she's sort of, all the scenes that have Midge in them are actually her trying to help him. And I think that might be the plot to the movie Shutter Island,
okay,
which is a great film if you ever get the chance to see it. But it's a really cool idea that I wouldn't have mind having to see, Midge actually trying to help him and sort of having like a romance with him of sorts, but maybe not a romance. They could have done it in different ways. It was like a cool thing, and it just didn't play out that way, and it kind of made me sad.
I like the movie. You know what I mean? Like, I fucking enjoyed watching it. I can see in some instances, like, why people love it, like, for the effects and for, like, how artsy some of the shots were. I almost feel like we're just inviting people to, come shoot us in the foot for for being like, yeah, the story was ridiculous, and everybody was smack. Someone's gonna smack me right there, and I'm like, and it makes no sense. Why would he smack? And someone's gonna smack me right there. Going through it, it was almost like every time I wanted to say to myself, well, that's stupid. I was like, no, you're the stupid one. You're clearly not understanding what a masterpiece this is, and how much it makes sense that he was gonna smooch his best friend's wife after fucking 3 days of following her. How much of this am I just, like, not understanding? It sounded like you were kind of close to the same page I was with the shit that didn't make sense.
I want to start off by saying we should never inhibit ourselves from judging a movie just because a lot of people agree it's really good. They could even have some of the best arguments in the world for why it's good. First of all, we haven't heard those arguments, so we're ignorant to them. They aren't, like, obvious things, because if they were obvious, we would have noticed them. They're things that somebody would have to, like, have a very keen eye to catch. And not just a keen eye, but some degree of education in film and the language of film and all of these things. Things that we're not ignorant to, but that are sort of esoteric in the first place, and again, they're not intuitive. So don't tell yourself, oh no, this movie has some degree of reverence and therefore I cannot judge it. Don't do that. As far as my opinion on it, I get why a lot of it is likable. It's very atmospheric. It has a great soundtrack. The visuals are really, really well done. But for me, it's not The Shining. If I had to pick a movie that's like, it's hard not to see why this movie is fucking amazing, it'd be The Shining. The Shining's just really, really fucking good, dude. I don't think this movie does that. I understand why, like, a lot of the argument for this is the best movie ever made is going to boil down to some really weird shit. Like, one of the things a lot of people bring up that makes Citizen Kane the best movie ever made is that it invented a ton of things, and movies that came out after it had to use the things that it invented.
Okay.
So by that virtue, if you pick a movie, let's say The Shining, that was made in, like, the 1980s, well, a lot of the stuff in The Shining is just piggybacking off of stuff that was invented in Citizen Kane, and therefore it cannot be a better movie than Citizen Kane because it's using stuff that Citizen Kane invented and it wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think what I was gonna ask was like, we've talked previously about like the difference between fucking Hydrox and Oreo. Is there a similar situation here where Citizen Kane was made like within the same year as some other movie that did? I guess that's hyper specific. It couldn't have fucking happened because if it was that good, somebody might have seen it. But you know what I'm getting at? What if there was a Hydrox of Citizen Kane that we just didn't see?
Citizen Kane kind of came out at that perfect time to really like, because remember,
solidify new shit.
Yeah, the history of film is weird and difficult to pin down exactly, but there's a long period of time where people didn't really know what a movie was supposed to be. And that's why you get a lot of recordings with that weird voice where they're like doing that like vaudeville, like, oh yeah, we're going around to the town. It's going to be a good time, sweetheart. And in those same recordings, if you listen to like the part that they cut, you know, if you get an extended clip of the recording, sometimes you'll get to hear their normal voice. And they're just doing that weird voice because that's what they thought you had to do in a movie to sound theatrical. And a lot of like older movies, they're like, it's like a stage play, but we're just capturing it with this motion picture thing. That's it. So they would play them up like stage plays, which is entirely different from how we work a movie. Great example, not Clint Eastwood, but John Wayne. They're two different guys. John Wayne is kind of a huge asshole and nobody likes him, but people liked him back in the day. And his voice was so iconic that he was one of the first actors ever, I think he was the first actor ever, to be able to speak without the camera being pointed directly at him. They thought his voice was so identifiable that they didn't have to like show you who's talking. And that was huge, because up until then, if someone was talking, the camera had to show that person talking in order for audiences to know who's talking. That's what they thought it had to be. So John Wayne invented, not him specifically, but whoever was directing him in that movie, I think it was like Stagecoach or one of those like fucking old ass cowboy films. But like that's how they thought it had to be, and he changed that forever. And Citizen Kane is kind of like that. So think about that John Wayne example, but with like different audiovisual, having a narrator, stuff like that, that Citizen Kane came up with, and that got used all the time. And that's why a lot of people put Citizen Kane as the best movie ever. And Vertigo, you know, there are reasons for it too. And, you know,
there's reasons to pick
The Shining, and there's reasons to pick Shawshank Redemption, and there's reasons to pick Shrek, and there's reasons to pick Shrek 2.
I mean, I just want to say, from what I've heard, people are jaw-dropped about the new fucking Puss in Boots sequel.
It is a marvel of animation, to say the very least. Like, from what I can tell, it's right up there with, like, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's very well done.
Well, fuck. All right. Well, it's on my list of shit to watch. Already it was.
Yeah, I have not seen the movie, but just from, like, the trailers and stuff that I can see, the animation is impeccable. So at least there's that. Yeah, Vertigo's a very good movie. It's a very, very well-made movie. It's very intelligently made. There's a couple of changes I would make, obviously. There's a couple of changes I think you would make, but people are weirdly judgy whenever you're like, this movie that everyone agrees is really good could use some improvements. And they're like, what do you mean? Star Wars A New Hope is the best movie ever. And you're like, but it's not perfect. And they're like, yes, it is. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, I feel like my alternate plot where the man is driven mad is, I don't know, in my opinion, a better story than Ooga Booga Booga, says the nun, and the lady falls off the tower.
Another thing to consider here is how many movies end on such a sour note in the 1950s?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
And like, not just a sour note.
I thought he was gonna jump. I thought he was gonna jump to die with her. Honestly, that was how like poorly like the story ended for him.
I was going to bring that up also when I was talking about him pushing her. It might have been really interesting for either him to sort of just grab her and jump off so they can both die together, or for her to jump off, but in jumping off, grab him, and then they both die together. But yeah, I agree. Them both dying together is very romantic and poetic and interesting, whereas her getting scared by a nun and or trying to avoid getting caught, both not terribly interesting when you think about them. And those are basically the only two options. If I'm looking forward to someone emailing us and just saying like, actually, you fucking dumbass, the reason that she jumped was because the nun is her clone. And you would know that if you paid any attention at all. This movie's about clones, dumbass.
The nun is actually Carlotta, and it was a vampire movie.
Yeah. Shit, man. I can't wait. Fucking hit us up with that shit. But hey, we are coming up on that time. Is there anything you want to say? Last sort of, last shot before we see ourselves out, see for ourselves out of this? I was trying to think. It didn't work.
No. I thought it was good. I want more of it. You mentioned at one point that, like, you know, what a shame that Midge Midge didn't get it because Judy did get it, and because Judy was, typical beautiful woman of the time. They can all get it today. All right, like I don't. They can both get it right now. Fucking they are gorgeous, and like I don't know what the typical thing of the time was. I think the typical thing of the time is that like even if you were wearing a suit, you couldn't wear pants. It still had to be a skirt. But like God, there were just a lot of gorgeous people in this movie, and the one thing I'll say that was really weird is that like you had to be drop dead gorgeous if you were a woman, and if you were playing the detective, I don't know, in your early 50s, yeah, just fucking go do detective things.
Yeah, the leading men in this movie were not great.
not as great as the bombshells.
Yeah, the women were all gorgeous beyond belief, and the men are like they're just guys, they're just dudes.
Even the older chicks, like when he's like seeing Judy or Madeline in God, what was the name of that restaurant again? You just said it earlier.
Ernie's. It's Ernie's.
Yeah, Ernie's. When he's going through Ernie's and he's seeing like people who he thinks is Madeline, and it's like, oh no, she's in her like late 40s. It's like they can get it. Everybody in this movie can get it.
It's like the Mummy. Everybody in the Mummy can get it. Like every single character in that movie. They are all weirdly sexy. Even like the nerdy brother to the bombshell love interest. He's still pretty fuckable.
Like, goddamn, dude.
He's like a full-on coward and like a nerd, and he's like really scrawny. Still weirdly fuckable.
Hey, while we're talking about this, because Midge was designing bras, and I really liked the fucking back and forth where it's like, oh, this is an aircraft engineer designed this cantilever bra system, and it's like, that's just a wild fucking sentence to like throw in the movie during exposition.
That was going to be my final note. I'd been holding on to that silver bullet up until this moment. They brought that up, and I thought it was going to be important at some point. Nope.
Nope.
It's just in there, and I guess it's in there in the way that like they're not supposed to explain it or anything, and it kind of makes the world a little bit more real. Like sometimes you'll write a line in like a screenplay or something that's just supposed to be in there to make it seem like these are real people having a real conversation. Like they'll just randomly point out a story in the news or something that you would think, right. Oh dang, he brought up a news story that's in the news right now. I'm sure that'll come up again later. Nope. It just helps to fill out the world.
You can't have all of these drawings around here unless she's doing it for a living. I don't know. What do chicks do for a living? I don't know. Boobs. Yeah. She's a boob model. Fucking whatever.
Yeah. She helps to design bras, or she draws bras, or I don't know, something girly. Are you sure she can't just own a flower shop? No, there's a flower shop in the movie. She can't also own a flower shop.
It's flower shops all the way down.
It's just wow. So Madeline went to a flower shop. Doesn't your friend run a flower shop? Different flower shop. Well, did Madeline go to the flower shop that she owns? Madeline owns a flower shop. Yeah, so now there's 3 flower shops in this movie. Well, she's a girl. It's the only job a girl can have.
Oh, God. Do you know anybody in town that knows, like, historical people? Yes, he also owns a flower. It's San Francisco's entire economy was detectives and flower shops.
What was that line that Midge gives where he's like, do you know anybody who knows the history of San Francisco? And she's like, this professor. And he's like, no, different history. Like, who's done what and where they were at what nights and stuff like that.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, you mean like who shot whom on 1870, the Thursday, 1873 in May, and what kind of questions are you asking anyways? And he just rattles off the same thing.
Well, before she says that, she says, oh, you mean the big gay history of big gay San Francisco.
Oh my God, yes, I forgot about that line.
And I don't know, like, I'm not trying to be mean to San Francisco. This is a France situation all over again. Fuck me. But
well, no, this was back in the 50s. Weren't all the gays in Marrakesh or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, they stop in at San Francisco before they hop on the boat to Marrakesh. One big party in San Francisco before they swim over to Marrakesh. Why do you think gay people are in such great shape? Because they swim from San Francisco to Marrakesh.
Right.
That'll get you jacked. Oh God. Yeah, that line was very interesting, and I don't know if it was like has San Francisco always been kind of foppish, or like was
Right. Well, I don't know how much of a lean they were putting on it, because there was a point in time where it's like big gay San Francisco was like, oh, happy-go-lucky San Francisco.
I also wonder if saying gay like that so casually was like a huge deal at the time.
Right.
Because
Well,
I mean,
that's the thing. Like, I don't know. Were movies at the time like willing to discuss being gay? You know, because I feel like it was one of those things that was shoved so far under the rug that like they could very well have been saying big gay San Francisco as in big old happy San Francisco.
honestly, you might be nailing it. For some reason in my mind, I was thinking Hitchcock is responsible for the first like toilet in a movie scene.
Oh.
He could be just pushing the envelope here again. Hey, you're not allowed to say the word gay unless you're directly meaning happy. And he's like, okay, well, I could say big gay San Francisco. And they're like, no, you can't talk about how there's a lot of gay people in San Francisco. I'm not. I'm saying it's big happy San Francisco. That's all. Oh, well, I guess you can say that. And he's just, found a loophole here to get to
He's
say.
just over here grinding his hands together. Yeah, you're gonna let me do it.
This is his way of like, I don't know, maybe that's his way of like getting back at the executives, like, haha, fuck you guys. Or maybe this is his way of like supporting gay people. I have no clue. Maybe I'm not trying to say the See For Yourself podcast is the Vertigo of podcasts, but we did point out that Marrakesh is the place to go for gays, and Vertigo pointed out that San Francisco is the place to go for gays. I'm just saying.
No, it is one for one the same thing. If you've watched an entire season of See For Yourself, you've basically watched Vertigo.
Yep, I'm Alfred Hitchcock.
I'm Midge,
and this is Midge. I'm glad you picked Midge of all the people. Well, we'll go ahead and call it there. We'll call it a Vertigo, and we will see for yourself next time.
Yeah.